Awesome,
Uh,
awesome. Welcome in if you just got in. Oh, we're just getting started, but we are just talking about what we love about the autumn season. Go ahead and keep putting in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Janelle Marinas. I am the Director of Partner Success at Cultured Enough. And one of the things I get to do is just be able to listen to our partners, onboard them onto our Ed-Enuf e-learning platform, but really listen to them so that we can put out sessions like this to really understand this is what has come out of people saying, we would love some resources on conflict. And because we didn't have that on Ed-Enuf yet, we were like, let's just host a live series, a live conversation. So that's part of what I get to do is just listening to our partners and engaging them through events like this. So, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to my co-facilitator, Joshua Grace.
Thank you, Janelle, and hello, everybody. It's so nice to see some many familiar faces, people that I've gotten to work with over the last couple months, even. So that's very cool for me. And I'm a senior consultant here at Culture Enough. Shout out to the rest of the Culture Enough team that are on this call, Hyatt and Taylor. Very cool. And I'm excited too because conflict resolution in the workplace, especially, is one of those issues that I think, unfortunately, we think is a personality based too many times or culture based, where a lot of the times it's skill oriented, and we can definitely skill up a bit to help conflict resolution in the workplace go a lot better. And to do that, we're going to have some particular postures that at Culture Enough we're trying to keep this posture of listening and respectfulness. We really do like that people have different perspectives, so even some disagreements going to be normal. But using I statements, speaking from your own perspective and your own experiences, goes a long way. Psychological safety at Culture Enough, expressly, we want to make it okay to make learning mistakes. So when we're talking about different concepts and we don't all understand them completely yet, we're not completed on our journey. So that's going to be okay in this learning space. And also we ask that just any stories, if we get into breakout groups or otherwise, that you're sharing, just remember to protect the people who aren't here. So you don't use any names. It can all that stuff can be anonymous. Doesn't even need to be at where you work at because we're talking more about conflict resolution strategies and triggers that cause conflict, not trying to put people on blast, especially if they're not here.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. And for our objectives for today, this is part two of our two-session conflict management in the workplace series. So today we're going to dive deeper into what really triggers conflict in the workplace and then also break down some real-life scenarios, as well as gain some insights into managing these challenging situations with finesse and confidence. If you did not get a chance to either attend our first session or watch the recording, that's totally fine. I still welcome you to be able to engage in our session today. But if you were in the first session and you were participating live and you are in this second session as well, just as promised, you will get a certificate of completion. So please stick around at the end just so that we can make sure to get your emails and names so that we know who to be able to send those to. Quick disclaimer, legal advice. What we'll never do is tell you exactly what to do. These are really just recommendations that you can be able to take into your workplace. But just a quick legal disclaimer advice is just saying like, if before you try to implement something in your organization, definitely talk to HR, talk to leadership. We don't want you to get in trouble for trying to implement something that we had shared, but really just bring your leadership team along with you. Okay, so the problem that we're talking about today, one thing that Josh had mentioned earlier is that conflict in itself is not the problem alone. Conflict is inevitable in the workplace, in all relationships, in all parts of life, right? And a lot of conflict can actually lead to really great things. It can lead to innovation. It could lead into creating a new system that'll make things go a lot quicker and a lot easier, more streamlined in the workplace. So conflict in itself, I want to be able to say, is not the problem. It can also lead to deeper relationships with their colleagues. What the problem is, though, is that currently, on average, managers are spending over 4 hours a week dealing with conflict and spending too much time because oftentimes we're not necessarily taught on how to deal with conflict in the workplace. So we're spending a lot of time either avoiding it or, trying to deal with it. Poor communication is the number one cause of conflict in the workplace. And then 1 in 4 people think that managers handle conflict poorly or very poorly. I don't know if I'm the only one in the room who has had either a passive aggressive or just an aggressive manager or a colleague that I've worked with. But that's 1 in 4 people on average. And then the more time that any given individual in a given workplace spends dealing with conflict at work, the lower their job satisfaction and the less included they feel at work. So, one thought that I want you to be able to consider as we keep moving along in this session is what role does conflict resolution play in your leadership and in your organizational culture?
Thanks, Jen. This next activity we're going to try together is something where you can just put it into the chat based on a prompt that I offer. And number one, whatever statement I put out there, if it's definitely not you, you're not into it at all, it's a number one. And on the opposite side, if you're like, oh yeah, that's me, that's number five. And the ones in between, that's up to you to discern. But I would just put out there, there's going to be 3 or 4 prompts. Don't do neutral to everyone because you end up putting yourself in a lane. And we want to let you feel free to move around a little bit. Any questions about this activity before we get started? All right, here goes the first prompt. I am able to remain calm and maintain a curious mind even during conflicts. And as the answers come in, I'll just ask 1 or 2 person to share each time. But 1 is disagree and 5 is agree. I'm able to remain calm, maintain a curious, open mind. Okay, so there's a lot of 4s, and we have a 2. Thank you for that. Ashley, would you say why you put a 4, please, in terms of your ability to remain calm? I'm sorry, I
I
caught you
wish I
while
can
you're
get off mute.
talking.
There
My
you
bad.
go. No, you're fine. I put a 4 because it's part of my job in HR. It's kind of become second nature to remain calm and maintain a curious mind during conflicts, so that we can get to the root cause of the conflict and help mediate it between the employees. And we can't have a spike in our anxiety um, or behaviors if our employees are also having a spike in behaviors. It kind of will balance out, and we won't be effective in the communication. So that's my reasoning for putting a 4.
Hmm. Thank you so much for that. And let's go to actually, Alistair, do you mind sharing? You had a 2, which is really good too. Oh, okay. Okay, right now. Okay, we'll come back to you. Let's go to the next prompt for now. My coworkers consider me approachable, open to feedback, and willing to consider their perspectives. 1 is disagree, and 5 is strongly agree. Aaron, I noticed you put a 5. Would you share what some of your thinking behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't always nail it when they bring me something, but they so far always feel like they can, for sure.
Hmm.
I like to think that I'm approachable and open, and so
Thank you. And now I'm assuming that you've heard that from people too about your leadership by the way you're describing it. That's really cool. Thank you.
right, right.
Claire, would you mind sharing why you put a 4 on it?
I would say once again, it's the feedback I receive from the people that I work with, both verbally and in writing, that may find me approachable to come to. But I'd say, like most people, I occasionally have extra large stress in life, and that's going to make me feel a little bit less approachable.
Mhm.
And I think when I've had those times, I've apologized. And people have generally known there's something big going on in my life, but so I gave myself a 4 because I think I do okay, but certainly not 100% of the time.
Mhm. Thank you for that. And I like that you're even bringing up you're humanizing leaders and humanizing supervisors. And we're going to even go through some scenario work at different times when I think it appears like the supervisor is misbehaving or something, and when our sympathies can immediately go to like, oh, what's this important employee going through? But like you just said, sometimes the supervisor also has a life outside of work, and sometimes those things are really heavy. They make a difference in even conflict resolution strategy. Thanks for that. And this next one, I have been previously trained in conflict management in the workplace. One is no, five is yes. Oh, and we just got to shout out Waco Family Medicine here because the last session had such a great turnout, particularly from your organization. Thank you, and we appreciate you. We love that. Kim, do you mind sharing why you put it to? And thank you
Oh,
for fixing your name too. That helps us this word.
no, yeah. Yeah. So my husband works with conflict resolution in churches globally and has done so much training. And I've gone to him many times and said, "Do you want me to take courses or training, or you want me to work with you? Because we do so much alongside each other."
Mhm.
He smiles with me and says, "It's not your gift." So he's done a lot. I've learned some, but I haven't dug in and learned in this
Mhm.
level. So I just know that I look for the germ of truth in what people are saying, but I know I'm not trained and I'm not an expert in this. And part of why I wanted to be here today, I'm like, okay, I've got so much more to learn.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that honesty and self-evaluation. So refreshing. This environment we're creating together is so good already, folks. Thank you. Okay, so this is the final one. While I'm experiencing a conflict at work, my productivity dips. This would be one is disagree, five is strongly agree. Sarah, do you mind sharing while you had a five in there?
Sure. Yeah, I think panic just overcomes my mind. And then I'm just like ruminating, right?
Mhm.
So that's tends to be why I'm less productive in those moments.
Wow, thank you for that. Rumination on the conflict really can be not productive. And Taylor, do you have a four in there? You mind sharing why?
Yeah, I had put a four because I feel like I get a lot of anxiety around conflict just because you never know really how it's going to turn out and
Mhm.
how that can affect your job. Like that conflict can make your workspace hostile or people might treat you differently. So I feel like I can't even really focus on what I'm supposed to do because I'm thinking about that.
Mhm. Thank you for that. I think we can all relate to that experience. And thanks for doing that exercise. It's a opportunity for us to keep bringing up these topics and seeing where we're all at.
Apologies for not being able to speak. I was trying to find a meeting room when I joined.
Oh,
So
no
sorry.
worries. Thank you. Is there anything you wanted to share now that you're all set?
So I would just say in general, when I said, I guess I'll do a five here. I'm a very passionate person. I come
Hmm.
from politics, the political arena. So I started off as an organizer, and just worked in about 11 states for a period of over 10 years, traveling the country. And so it requires a lot of passion and excitement, and that just sort of transitions into a lot of how I work. And it's difficult for me. So I have two modalities. I'm really focused or not. So that's why my productivity definitely dips when this
Mm.
comes because I just want to focus on it. I'm passionate about it. I want to get it done. I want it out of the way, and I want to move on. So
Mm.
yeah,
Thank you for that.
you're welcome.
And now, Janelle, you ready to take us to this next part?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for passing the mic. So let's dive into a little bit about what the research says about conflict in the worst workplace. Harvard Business Review put out an article that tells us that what triggers conflict in the workplace can be explained under four categories. The first one is communication differences. Um, Guilty. very guilty of this. That's caused tension in the workplace or even in relationships, personally as well. For example, communication with tone. Right now, we're on a meeting. You can see my hands moving. You can hear the inflection in my voice when I get really excited about something or really upset about something. But it's so different if I say the same exact thing that I say out loud versus on a text message, on an email, the tone is gone from that written message. So that is a communication difference that can often happen, that can cause conflict in the workplace. I can begin to overthink, for example, if there's like a dot 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 at the end of an email, like, am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong? I start to overthink it because I don't understand exactly where that came from or what they mean by that. The second one is opaque performance standards. Being unsure of what you're being measured on for performance evaluations can cause a lot of anxiety. And then also unclear priorities. What am I supposed to prioritize? Because what am I being measured on? We see this, for example, a lot with new managers transitioning into their roles, from individual contributor, doing bedside nursing, being a teacher, doing individual contributor work where you can directly see what are the outcomes of the work that you're doing, and then moving into a manager position where it's completely different. And then a lot of managers will get hired and say, okay, we want you to increase the engagement of the team that you're on. And then if I hear that as a new manager, I'm like, what does that mean? Does engagement mean, okay, like it's being measured on how many people are from your team are coming to the happy hours, to the events, to the parties, or is it being measured on, is there a survey that staff are taking that is saying, I feel very satisfied with my workplace organization. I need to, if you're going to be asking me to to ensure that there is high engagement on my team, I need to know what I'm being measured on. Otherwise, it's going to cause, again, a lot of that anxiety. Unreasonable time restraints. I feel like I don't need to explain this one. I think we've all been there, as well as unclear expectations as well. But some of the more proactive strategies that research says to be able to do is being able to establish clear channels of communication to prevent communication differences. Having regular check-ins with team members and check-ins that are actually verbal so that, again, you can hear the inflection in people's voices, but having a regular check-in set up is really helpful because I know that I've gotten some last minute calendar invites from my boss. And even though, we have a good relationship and we're very clear with one another, sometimes I get those and I'm like, oh no, why is this random meeting on my calendar? There's nothing on it. I have no idea what we're talking about, what's going on. Having regular check-ins, and then also being able to clearly define modes of communication, meaning email is for formal updates, Slack is for quick questions. Being able to define what those are is going to be really helpful for your team. Being transparent about performance expectations, clearly defining those indicators. What do you mean by engagement? What do you mean by these different indicators, and how am I being scored on them? And then also, what are some specific goals with those? Managing time expectations. I know that one practice that we've done is, okay, you want me to move this project up by 2 weeks? Let me, because of the relationship I have with my supervisor, let me see what I can move from my current plate to after 2 weeks, so that I can focus on what you want me to be able to focus on. But being able to have that relationship is really key to saying, okay, what can I move off my plate so I can prioritize this instead? And then if you're a manager, asking someone to move up as well, it's also guiding that because it's not always natural for people. Sometimes people just want to say yes, like, okay, like, yeah, I'll definitely do it, because they're yes people and they don't want to say no. So being able to coach people along that as well, if that's not a skill that they quite have. And then continuously clarifying role expectations, even if they change, because I know that my day-to-day looks different now than it did a year ago or 6 months ago. So being able to continuously check in with your people as well. Josh, I'm going to pass the mic back to you.
Janelle, you broke this down so well because if these four things, if we're thinking about that proactively as people who are setting the culture, as leaders, as managers, then that we're going to reduce the amount of that strain on the relationships. But these four are the critical ones that we're going to bring up again. And when you take that and start to think about this scenario, consider these triggers, and then we're going to go to breakouts where you can discuss it further. I'm going to read this to you, but just a little bit of a backstory. Angel and Cameron were with us last month in a scenario where their supervisor was about to go on vacation, came and changed their deadlines, gave them a new one, and they were trying to adjust to that. So this is the continuation of that scenario. Angel and Cameron offered to collaborate successfully on projects at their organization. Before their supervisor Casey's vacation, the two thought they completed a project as requested on the expedited timeline, despite Cameron's unheard concerns. During the meeting after that 2-week vacation, Casey thanked them again for meeting that last deadline and apologized for not being able to spend the time reviewing their project yet, but would as soon as possible. 2 days later, Casey sent them a terse email suggesting that their recent project looked sloppy and they both needed to improve their overall efforts. And then the questions, where if you want, you can snap a photo of these questions, but we're going to go to 6 minutes in these breakouts. But where is the conflict? What is the trigger behind the conflict? Particularly, we're thinking about those communication differences, the opaque performance standards, unreasonable time constraints, or unclear expectations. And what strategy attempted in the future for better outcomes and better process? Does anyone have any questions about the next 6 minutes? Great, going to discuss that, and then we'll come back and we'll synthesize together. Welcome back, everyone. Ashley was just giving Janelle and me some real life wisdom, just especially being an HR leader, and how much conflict resolution is part of that role. And how about your group? Was there anything happening there that some wisdom that you wanted to share with the rest of us, something you identified or something helpful? Could
One
be
of
about
the
this.
things,
Oh, excuse me. Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, you're good. One of the things someone shared in our group that I thought was really insightful was just how Cameron had unheard concerns, but they didn't feel safe enough to like speak up, or there wasn't that built-in feedback. So I thought that was a really good like insight that I didn't necessarily pick up on initially.
Thank you for that. Yep. And if the deadline is coming, whether that feeling of the deadline, whether it's the project has to close or it's my personal vacation, it can get a little bit sloppy in that, even paying attention to other people's hesitations. I at least have a tendency to listen less for that if I'm feeling like in a rush or in a time crunch. So thanks for bringing that up.
A phrase that I like for clarifying expectations is from Brene Brown, where she talks about painting it done. And so what does it look like to everybody, where a group of people have a conversation around creating that image of what something looks like when it's done? I just think it's helpful as a way to not have this happen again.
I like that. Thank you, Claire. Shout out Brene Brown. Is there maybe one other person who'd like to share something that? I will keep it moving. And Janelle, I will pass this one back to you, because sometimes conflict has to do with some intercultural skills.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So I love talking about the 5 levels of cross-cultural communication. Real quick, level 1, just casual conversation. That is the, hey, how you doing? Good, good. How are you? It's the casual saying that you're good, even though you know inside that you're not actually good, but you're just trying to keep it casual, right? That's level 1. Level 2 is being able to report facts. Things of like, oh, the pumpkin spice latte just came back out. That's a fact. Level three, if we want to change it up a little bit, is, oh, that's my favorite flavor. Or actually, I'm very anti-pumpkin spice. That is an exchange of opinions. In level four and level five, that is where we really start to get into deeper relationships in the workplace. Before I get into that though, I just want to clarify there's a time and a place for everything. I'm not saying like spill your entire life to your colleagues. That's not what I'm trying to say. But level four and level five is being able to share feelings, which emotional intelligence is a prerequisite for that, because if you are able to be self-aware enough to name your feelings, identify them, and then also manage them, then that's what's going to be really key for being able to share feelings. And then level five is deeper transparency, having a little bit more context to how you're feeling, and being able to share and explain why you're feeling in that way. And where conflicts start to arise cross-culturally is when people are operating in a single conversation at different levels. If I'm at a level one and someone else is at a level four, and if we're not able to meet each other in that conversation, that can really cause tension as to, and it's also, it happens really quickly. So if I'm at a level four and someone's at a level one, there might be tension in there that we were just like, oh, wait, what just happened? We were just talking. We were just having a conversation. One example is, say that one person is at a level one. They're asking, hey, how's your day? Person number two at a level four, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed. There's two outcomes that could really come out of this specific conversation scenario. Is if that first person stayed at level one and just like, oh, sorry to hear that, gotta go. There's a disconnect there. You're missing the person who is at a level four. Or the other outcome could be empathy, where, oh, you're feeling overwhelmed. Can you, like, what's going on? Being able to meet them at that level four moment, that is empathy. Another example where we can get into a little bit more cross-culturally, and I've had this happen to me. So I say that I'm at a level five, and someone's like, "Oh, hey, how are you doing?" And if I have a relationship with that person, maybe I'm feeling comfortable enough to be at level five and say, "Oh, I just feel a little bit unsettled. I just at a coffee shop or a client meeting, and someone just called me exotic, and so I just feel very unsettled by that statement." Someone who might be at level two, they might say, "Oh, who said that? What did they exactly say? Oh, that person, they didn't actually mean it that way." That is a sense of invalidation, and it can cause a misunderstanding that can cause a rift between me and this person, because I'm at a level five and they're at a level two, and they just stay there instead of meeting me where I am currently at. So that's where a lot of conflict can happen. Josh, I'm going to pass the mic back to you to be
That
able
was
to.
just, thank
Yep.
you, Janelle. That was such a lucid example, and the of how many times I think many of us have been in those situations wondering, how did this go wrong?
Mhm.
Um, I think you described them really well. Another strategy that we want to put out there comes from a psychologist, Dr. John Gottman, and taking his work with couples and applying that into the workplace. And that's what Psychology Today was doing with this article that we'll also send you at the end of this. And the Gottman, what's known as the magic ratio, just had to do with them measuring couples' success through, and the obvious thing that they said was the couples who have 5 positive interactions to every negative interaction have more enjoyment and a higher likelihood to succeed as couples. So that's in a one particular container. But now in the workplace, the studies are finding about relating positive interactions and positive uh, verbal, positive statements to each other as indicators of high performance. So the teams that are performing really highly, they had a really high amount of positive interactions, 5.6 actually, which is a funny number, to every negative comment. Those medium performing ones, is 2 to 1, mostly positive still, but it keeps performance at a certain level. And the real cap for those lower performing teams in this regard was that the negative comments were more often, or those negative interactions were 3 times as often as a positive one. So that just in my own leadership or my own ways that I try to inhabit space in the work zones, that's I try to lead with as many positive comments and taking time to say thank you to somebody, or to when they said something that really helped me, to just tell them that it helped me. And some of that is to help them perform better, and just be that honesty. I think when we're empowered and encouraged, people, you bring out the best in other people. And when it is time to have either if it's an accidental negative comment, like Janelle was saying, what if she and I were getting on a call? It was like, hey, how you doing? And we turned into a negative interaction really quick. If we have that base that we've been building of these positive ones, that ratio doesn't get twisted, and we're still able to perform. But this is kind of a lot of like, okay, here's this 40-year-old wisdom of psychology, and here's the workplace. But is this making sense? I see a lot of nodding in this, but does anybody else want to talk about maybe how they've done this with their leadership, or how it works in their scenario, in their workplace? Kim, I see you.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you. I've never thought of the invalidation, that when you made that point of when someone says something and you bring out the other side. I'm sure I can be guilty of that, but I've net like a light bulb came on when you said that. So thank you so much. I love all of Gottman's stuff, and he's fantastic. So I agree with all of that wholeheartedly. But invalidation is really a new thought. I'm like, got it. Thanks.
Thank you, and for picking up on that.
I think the other thing that came into my mind as I was looking at this was kind of the third option, which is no feedback. And so for me, the worst work environment I ever worked in, I had neither negative nor positive, just an absence of.
Yeah, and then you're left to guess and just kind of be fearfully walking the earth in the meantime. Yeah, that's a stressful environment. Okay, excellent. Well, and then this is going back to our first session where we were really focusing on these different strategies, and these are the most common ones that we use when we're in a conflict. And some of them, I apologize, I have a siren driving by my house, but we are using these most of the time, whether consciously or unconsciously. And those, of course, are the competing, coming in too hard, saying I'm going to get my way, or I'm not getting my way, accommodating, deferring too quickly, giving up, avoiding, completely trying to not be in the conversation or not be into the exchange. Compromising starts to get at a little bit of understanding one another's perspectives, understanding their desires, their interests, and give a little, get a little. But the highest level of conflict management strategies is collaboration, where multiple parties are able to understand one another, express their needs, and come up with creative solutions together. So these are a little bit of an amalgamation of a bunch of different scenarios as we've been talking to people. And Janelle keeps asking, if you're on the Ed-Enuf email list, you probably heard her at some point say, hey, if there's a little scenario from your, useful in a breakout group or something, please share that with us. So some of these are emails like that we try to generalize a little bit more, make them unidentifiable with any industry, any particular group or person. But these are just different examples, and I want to talk about one, and Janelle will talk about one as well. But just this first one about, I know the person I supervise has a problem with me, but hasn't verbalized it directly. How can I get them to talk about it and work it out with me? So this is a supervisor probably trying, yes, it is a supervisor trying to work out this relationship problem. And some of the triggers for that conflict could be that communication difference. Maybe the supervisor was only reading body language at a group meeting, or it was only on Zoom, or it was looking too much into a message on Slack or a text message. But getting in person, especially even if you're one-on-one, you're able to observe one another's body language and communicate in a fuller way. So even just the communication of being able to make a time to say, hey, can we talk? Pulling aside for 5 minutes where you stop the rest of what's going on to focus on this. Some of that is even that just communication to say, hey, we need to just talk. And whether or not it gets to that exact point immediately isn't as important as just changing the communication modality. But those opaque performance standards or unclear expectations, in some places, and some people on this call too are work for faith-based organizations or ministries where having a la every conflict needing to be resolved is part of maybe one of the values of the organization. But in a lot of professional settings, you're not required to um, not have a problem. Like if you have a personality difference with somebody in a workplace, there's a certain amount of that needs to even be permitted. Whereas, in certain scenarios, you really want to solve every problem. But anyway, this could just be also dealing with someone's avoidance. And I just go back to this is if somebody is really avoiding, likely the tactic to get them to avoid was competition. So the messaging has been too strong that they're going off it. So trying to change strategies into either compromise or collaborating, which begins with understanding their perspective, understanding their interests in this situation. So that would just be one suggestion from that scenario of like how if you think somebody has a problem and it's relevant to the work, how can you strategically build that relationship up enough to even using some of those if it's a cross-cultural interaction, understanding that there needs to be even more of that proactive listening. Janelle, would you break down one of these for us too?
Yeah. I'd love to touch on that second one that we have there. This quote was summarized by a particular white man that we have worked with in the past, and this is also just a sentiment that we've heard a lot of folks that are new to their cultural intelligence journey, new to learning bias, things of that nature. And there's this sentiment where I'm afraid to bring up performance concerns with a team member who is a person of color, or so let's say I'm the person, and because they don't want to be perceived as a racial or cultural issue. How do I bring up the problems of performance without causing unnecessary harm by, maybe some implicit bias I have or things of that nature? And so, Josh, if you could go to the last slide of conflict management strategies real quick. And this is an example of either accommodating and saying like, oh, like we don't need to talk about the performance. Let me, I'm just going to accommodate for that person. I don't want to bring their confidence down. I don't want to cause any unnecessary harm. Or this could also be seen as avoiding. And Josh, if we could come back to the scenario page, thank you. The triggers for this, there's honestly a few different ones that we could see from this particular scenario. It could be a communication difference. And it could also be maybe some ownership around, did I have unclear expectations? Were there opaque performance standards? Because when the strategy in addressing this without causing any additional harm is to be able to speak to someone's behavior, not their identity. How do you call out behavior without calling out we don't need to say that this person is lazy. We don't need to say that. We can just say, hey, I've noticed that your projects have been coming in later than anticipated. Can we talk about that? That is taking it away from just my specific identity and talking to my actual behavior and the outcomes of my work. So that's definitely a tool that we can have. And then also coming back to say, hey, I might have had some unclear expectations about, timeline. Can we clear that up? Can we collaborate and have a conversation of what that looks like? Because if it is that we're just giving you too short of a timeline every single time, that's something that we can fix, right? So being able to address this strategically without causing any unnecessary harm is really about that collaboration piece, having a real conversation with someone instead of just accommodating, because I know it can be scary. Conflict in general is scary, but then also, especially if you're new in your cultural intelligence journey, it can be a little bit more difficult when you are supervising or are a colleague of someone who is a different identity than you. But I will say, as you improve in your cultural intelligence, this does get a lot easier for sure to be able to navigate as well. So we're also going to get into another breakout session. We'll do a quick 5-minute one so that we can get through the rest of the slide. But if you want to take a snapshot of these questions real quick in the breakout rooms, which of these scenarios were most relevant to you? What unsuccessful strategies were attempted by those involved who resolved the conflict? And then what strategies were successful in that as well? So I'm going to go ahead and open these rooms.
Welcome back, everybody. Apologies if that was a short breakout, especially, but if you were speaking and trying to finish your thought there and we cut you off at the time, that's unfortunate.
Aaron
Sorry.
was on the roll there. Come on.
Aaron was finally getting to it.
Claire was killing it. She was giving us a TED talk. I was like, yes, girl.
Hey, okay. I'm happy to hear that. We're getting somewhere today. I also apologize that we are running out of time. I wanted to hear more about what was happening in there because sharing from those different groups just builds the wisdom of the whole team. But I do thank you each for participating today and being such a engaged group is just the co-learning experience for everybody goes up. So appreciate that. But we're talking about healthy organizational culture. It depends on healthy, productive dialogue, including healthy conflict. With strategy, you could disarm those triggers for conflict, proactively considering strategically, like, I don't want this person to be messed up on unclear time expectations. So being clear up front, that kind of thinking, understanding those levels of cross-cultural communication and applying some kind of the 5-to-1 positive to negative. Not everybody's going to be able to do that, or every team, but understanding that that actually can lead to higher performing teams. Here's our sources these articles that we can get to. And Janelle, would you just help us land the proverbial plane, thinking about these certificates in next time?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so we'll definitely make sure. I've taken a screenshot of who all attended today. So if you were in the first session and the second session, I'll be sure to follow up with that certificate of completion. But we have another certificate opportunity if you want another one, or if you did not get a chance to get the one for conflict management. But up next, we have a 3-part series in October, November, and January on where the hidden bias, uncovering where bias shows up in hiring, performance evaluations, and also day-to-day interaction. So if you scan that QR code, that'll take you to the registration for our first session of the 3. And then you can just look out for your email because we'll be able to send all the links to the rest as well. But thank you so much for participating and engaging with us in this 2-part series. We are excited to have you at the next one.
Enjoy the rest of your week. We appreciate you. Thanks for making this such a engaging time for us all.
Thank you, everyone.